Happy Wednesday and good evening. It's good to have you along as the college football season, believe it or not, is just a couple of days away. I'm Travis Justice, co-host of the Doc Talk podcast presented by Betfred Sports. And over the next half hour, we have a lot of fun for you because during the next several weeks, all the way through the college football season, we are going to be going live on Wednesday night, right here at 8 o'clock, same time, same day, as we go behind the point spread. That's right. We are going to go behind the point spread and dive deeper into the games. Now, Dr. Rob's going to be joining us, and I'm going to introduce a very special guest a little bit later on. But speaking of Betfred Sports, did you know that you can get a free bet right now? Betfred Sports has just launched its brand new app in the state of Iowa, and for app holders who are new signups in the state of Arizona, Colorado, and Iowa, we are going to give you a free bet. That's a free $20 bet. Here's what you have to do. If you have an iPhone, go to the Apple App Store. If you have an Android phone, which I'm a Google guy, you go to the Google Play Store. You download the Betfred Sports app. You create a brand new account. Then you do the promo code DocTalk. You don't even have to deposit money on this. We are going to give you a $20 bet. And again, that is in Arizona, Colorado, and Iowa. I do want to remind everybody that tonight's show is for entertainment purposes only. We're here to have a lot of fun. We're here to talk football. And if you do have a gambling problem or somebody you know has a gambling problem, all you have to do is call 1-800-BETS-OFF. You know, Doc Talk Sports is all over social media. And if you're watching tonight on YouTube and have not subscribed to the Doc Talk Sports YouTube channel, please do so. If you don't follow Dr. Rob on Twitter, you're missing something. I'm telling you, the dude's funny. He tweets all the time. You can follow him at Doc Talk Sports. You can also like our Facebook page at Doc Talk Sports. And if anybody gives a crap about me, which you may or may not, you can follow me at Travis Creates. We are taking phone calls tonight. I want you to write this number down. If you hear something that intrigues you, if you have a question, we are taking phone calls tonight. 402-543-5556. Again, 402-543-5556. Our very special guest, who, by the way, is not getting paid by Betfred Sports. He's doing this out of the kindness of his heart, is a very good friend of mine. Scott Spreitzer is an Omaha native. We'll find out in just a few minutes what year he graduated. I think it was Bellevue East. But after high school, you know, he was betting on the South Side basically all his teenage life. He would hang out at Exarban. He would do all that stuff. He became fascinated by the sports gambling world. So when he was done in Bellevue, he hightailed it to Las Vegas. He's never left. He's been a sports handicapper and a professional sports bettor ever since. You can find all of Scott's excellent info at docsports.com. Again, that's docsports.com. And you should follow him on Twitter as well at Scott Wins. And joining us now for the first ever edition of Behind the Point Spread is Scott Spreitzer. And look who's in the basement drinking a beer, Dr. Rob Zadiska. Doc, I just saw you last night. What are you drinking tonight, buddy?
I got a Severance Brewing out of Sioux Falls.
Not well, because
double IPA.
You're into the Sioux Falls because your son is going to Augustana, and you must have picked some up when you made the last trip.
We did. There's kind of low key, a really nice little craft brewing scene up there. So a lot of craft breweries that putting out some good stuff. I'm still kind of feeling my way around with all of them, but so far Severance does a great job. Remedies out of Sioux Falls, they do a great job. There's some good stuff up there.
All right, I'm drinking out of my Betfred Sports boot koozie. I'm drinking a New Belgium Mountain Time Lager. Scott Spreitzer's in Las Vegas as we speak. What are you drinking, buddy?
Can I show you?
Yeah, you can show me.
All right, well, there you go. It's kind of, I think my dog got to it or something. But, a little bit of Woodford Reserve.
You can't go wrong with the Woodford Reserve, not at all, man.
Absolutely not. And that's kind of my drink of choice. And I'm going to tell you guys, I'm just going to be honest right now. I've been doing shows since 9 o'clock this morning. I'm not tapping into that until about midnight tonight when I'm done handicapping. Because if I stutter through this after being up all day, after handicapping until 4 a.m. last night, I certainly don't want to have to blame Woodford. All right, most cases I will, but we'll keep from doing that for today. But Woodford is my drink of choice. I got to tell you guys, and I want you to try this beer if you get your hands on it, though. my favorite beer when you're eating Japanese food or Chinese food, and it's an import called Ginga Kogen, and it's Genga, second word Kogen, I believe. And if you type it in and Google it, it'll come up, even if I spelled it a little bit wrong. But it's called Ginga Kogen. And if you're eating sushi or you're eating some noodles, Chinese place or whatever, I'm telling you right now, you'll never go wrong. I special ordered this stuff for about a year at a local place here in town, and there's only one restaurant in town. And if you guys ever come out, it's on me. I'll take you there, and you can drink as many as you want. But they're incredible. It's my favorite beer now, Ginga Kogen.
Well, now he's, not only is he an expert when it comes to gambling, Rob, he's an expert when it comes to Japanese and Chinese beer. I never would have thought that.
And like beer pairing here. So,
yes.
Which I literally just, I just Googled it and pulled it up. So
Scott,
hold on a second. This is good. Travis, you got to hear this.
Okay.
Ginga Kogen beer recalls your forgotten human instincts.
Yeah.
And evokes a sense of wonder at nature as it passes down the throat.
See, that was like a Harlequin novel. You were talking dirty to me there, Rob.
You don't want to sit at home drinking this, but you do want to have it with Japanese or Chinese food, okay?
So, Scott, what year did you graduate? Was it Bellevue East? What year did you graduate Bellevue East?
You're killing me. If I knew you were going to do this, I would have said I'll be on next year. I went to Bellevue West, man. You're putting me in the wrong school, and I'm not happy about it. Thank goodness Bellevue West is kicking the crap out of the Chieftains for the last decade or so I don't get too upset. But I still have an old Bellevue West mug from my senior year, 1984. And I still got that Bellevue West mug from that senior year. But, yeah, I was a Thunderbird. I wasn't a Chieftain.
Yeah, and of course, you started betting on the South Side. We all know that. I think that's where everybody in Omaha starts betting is on the South Side or at Exarban. And so you and I met about 20 years ago, I think it was, close to 20 years when I was on a radio station in Omaha doing a morning/afternoon show. I got this phone call like, hey, would you like to have Scott Spreitzer? I'm like, who the hell's Scott Spreitzer? And you and I have remained, I would say, pretty close for the last 20 years. I mean, we don't talk all the time, but you and I at least 4 or 5 times a year make sure to reach out to one another. So it's a relationship that's been around for a while.
Yeah, I mean, every once in a while something comes up and it reminds me of you, or vice versa. We talk, and usually it's during football season, whether it be a Hawkeyes game or a Huskers game or what have you. But yeah, you know what? My family's from South Omaha for the most part. My dad and mom both grew up in South O. And my family originally migrated, if you're interested, from Germany, the grandparents and all that. They landed in Baltimore and Illinois. And then by the time my parents were born, it was Omaha. So they both went to South High. They're ex-Packers. And there was a little, I don't know if it's still there, there's a little tobacco shop that was, I don't know, I'm going to say halfway between, I don't even know if it's still there, but Eddie's Cafe and South High. And it was in that little region down there. And so in the 70s, my dad started taking me there. And I loved it because I would get my Street and Smith's College Football Annual. I would get all that kind of stuff. I'd get my Doc Sports Annual, which has been around for 51 years now. And I'd get these and I'd go home and that's all I'd do was read about college football. That was my sport even more than the NFL back then. And it was a little tobacco shop. And behind the counter and behind the wall, they were, doing a few things and with point spreads. And so my dad would go there and buy his chewing tobacco, and I'd buy my magazines, and that's how I got started. And but yeah, they're South Omaha born and bred. I can remember my dad, who's long since gone 10 years ago, but bookies asked him if they could come down to Bellevue and use our garage for their setup from South Omaha. So that never quite happened, but that's where I got my start. And I used to hang out there, and then I used to visit Rudy's. Rudy Stefan is the owner, but Rudy's was the name of it, a little fish joint. It was some relation to Joe Test, but it was better. And it wasn't too far from Joe Test, a couple blocks away. Oh, man, it was great. Little diner type place. You walk in, there's all these 90-year-old bodies sitting at the bar telling old stories. Go in there and eat this carp. That was incredible. People around the country.
No,
what the hell are you eating
carp is not incredible. You know that, right? Carp is not incredible fish.
Tabasco sauce flooding the carp. Pickle juice running all over with the rye bread.
What is up with you guys in bottom feeders?
What's that?
What's up with you guys in bottom feeders? I don't get people that like bottom feeder fish. I just don't
lobster
get it.
Is a bottom feeder,
and I don't eat lobster.
Shrimp's a bottom feeder.
You're missing out, my friend. If I
You
could
like
take you to
oysters.
Rudy's,
Oysters are bottom feeders.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So here's what's going to happen over the course of the season. We're going to be here on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock. We're going to be respectful of everybody's time. We really want to do a crisp, a half-hour show and really get a lot of information in on what we hope is like 4 games during the week. We'll always do the Nebraska game. We're always going to do the Iowa game, and then we're going to pick 2 other big college football games in between. This week's going to be a little bit different. And Scott, you brought it up. Let's start already with the win totals. These are what you like. These are win totals you can find right now at Betfred Sports and a lot of other sports books. You've got Colorado at 3.5. You got Washington State at 5. Nevada, which is a game we're going to look at a little bit later on as they play New Mexico State at 4.5. And there you see Nebraska at 7.5. Rob made his prediction last night. He has Nebraska at 8. I did my prediction last night. I have Nebraska at 7. What do you think of these?
I think that's perfect. I've got them, they got to get by Northwestern, whether they cover or not. And if they can get by Northwestern, I think 8 wins are certainly attainable. And I think anything less than 7 wins, if they win this opener, would be a disappointment. So I think 8 wins. I didn't play Nebraska's over-under wins total. I played the other 3 that you posted there. But again, it really comes down to this first game. They're pumped up. They're ready to go. If they blow it against Northwestern, what does that do to that psyche? This isn't a team coming off winning season after winning season anymore. So when you're expecting to go from 3-9, where you lost 8 games by a single possession and due to your own, self-inflicted wounds and most of those 8 losses, and you think you got it together, you got new coaches, everybody's pumped and ready to go. If you come out and lose a game that you got to win, you should win. You're a 2-touchdown favorite. Not talking about covering, but just win. If you come out and lose that game, it is a painful loss for the rest of the season because all of a sudden Scott Frost's name is back firmly on the chopping block if it isn't already. So it's really important. I mean, they lose this game, they could tailspin. They win this game, they could win 8 or 9 games. I'm not Colin Cowherd, who's got them ranked 8th in the country, but I do have them in the 25 to 28 range.
So you mentioned you played the other 3 games that are on there. Do you want to divulge your secrets tonight?
Sure. The smaller plays are Colorado under 3.5, Nevada under 4.5, and I can talk about those in just a second, why I came to that conclusion and made those wagers. My favorite over-under play in college football this year is Washington State over 5 wins. And you got to lay about $1.25, which means $12.50 for every 10 you want to win for that to go over. So they're a little bit of a favorite to go over that wins total. And, first thing I look at when I decide I'm going to play an over on a mid-level or so football program is if I think they can win out of the blocks. And I want to be ahead. I don't want to be down 0-1 and needing 6 wins in their final, 4 or 5 final 7 or 8 games. And so I look at this and I see right away when I jumped into it, and I thought, okay, they're playing Idaho out of the Big Sky on September 3rd. And this isn't the Vandals of the past when they were at the Division I level. They're now a Big Sky school. The recruiting has slipped a little bit. 4-7 last year. They suffered 3 losses by 42 or more points to Oregon State, Indiana, and Eastern Washington. They lost by 50 to Eastern Washington. Decent program, but again, it kind of tells you where they are. So when they step up in class, things go downhill. So I think Wazoo gets out of the blocks, no problem at all. They win that game against Idaho. They brought in an outstanding quarterback transfer, a guy by the name of Cameron Ward, guys. Keep an eye on this guy. He threw for 47 touchdown passes last year, nearly 5,000 yards. Incarnate Word. Just remember that. That's where he came over from. They've also got an assistant coach they hired who was his coach in his previous stop. And then Jake Dickert is their head coach. And he did coach a bunch of games last year in a temporary so-called basis. He's now the so-called permanent head coach. But Wazoo finished last year on a 6-2 straight-up run, guys. They've got plenty of winnable games on this 2022 schedule. They do have road games at Whiskey, at Wisconsin. They've got a road game at USC. Going to be tough. Home games against Oregon and Utah. But I have Washington State winning at least 7 of 8 games against Idaho, Colorado State, Cal, Oregon State, Stanford, Arizona State, Arizona, and Washington. I think they win at least 7 of those 8 games, and I have them going over that total of 5. And that's my favorite play right now of all college football wins totals that are out there and available.
And, the Colorado one, and I think Rob might be surprised by this. I know I'm kind of surprised by this because it's funny, Rob. I don't follow Colorado as much as we used to when, of course, they were in the Big 12. That 3.5, that program is just it just cannot get traction.
Well, and I think you've got a program that doesn't have a lot of I guess I'd call it administrative support at the university there. I mean, they want to be the Harvard of the Pac-12. I mean, they want to be a great school. I say the Harvard of the Pac-12. I guess they already kind of have that in Stanford. But,
I was going to say.
And Cal. But you've got a school that wants to be seen from an administrative standpoint far more in that line. I don't think they're going to ever really get the administrative support that they had back in the late 80s, early 90s when McCartney, Gary Barnett, Neuheisel, when those guys were there.
Scott, your thoughts on the Buffaloes?
Yeah, by the way, I just saw, I think it was today or yesterday, that McCartney turned 82 years of age. So,
wow.
Just bringing up his name. But yeah, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned the Harvard of the Pac-12. When Jerry Tarkanian was out here winning game after game and, playing for national titles with UNLV, they got a president of the school came in by the name of Robert Maxson. And he actually used the phrase, "We want to make UNLV the Harvard of the West." And like Travis, somebody told him we have Stanford and Cal. And so, but they actually thought they were going to get there. They didn't. But anyway, this season could go down as, I think, one of the worst in 50 years.
Wow.
Colorado. I think it's going to be really tough for them to reach 3 wins, let alone get over 3.5. This year's version is worse than last year's version in Boulder. They won just 4 games last year in 2021. 2 of those wins coming by 3 points, one of those in overtime. I got them losing their first 5 games of the season before they host California. And at most, I'm just looking at their schedule right now, at most I see is maybe 1 more win after maybe beating the Golden Bears. I think they win 2 games this year. So it's not as big as Washington State as far as my monetary move on this game, but I do think they stay under that total of 3.5.
The Nevada Wolfpack, and this is going to be a game we look at shortly, but they're at 4.5, and they're going to open on the road at New Mexico State. Before we dive into the game, what about that win total at 4.5?
Yeah, I played the under here also, and boy, it's just going to be a rough go of it for Nevada. And Rob can probably relate to this more than either one of us, Travis, because we never played major college football like he did. Do you know that they have lost 45 players from last year's roster, Nevada?
45?
45 players from last year's roster are no longer on this football team.
Was there a coaching change?
Absolutely. Jay Norvell, okay. You guys know Jay Norvell.
Yep.
He loved Reno. He wanted to stay there, and he wanted to make a thing of this program, and he's a pretty good coach. But they're the lowest paying job in the Mountain West Conference, and they're a good athletic program. And he left. He was making the lowest money in the conference. He goes to Colorado State, where he's now the highest paid coach in the Mountain West Conference. Wow. Takes coaches with him. A bunch of players transferred. They lost a strong quarterback. The team's a mess on both sides of the line of scrimmage for their new head coach, who's in his first head coaching job, I believe it is. But 45 players from last year's roster are no longer on this team, which it's a sad situation. Listen, I'm a UNLV guy. That's where I went and am from out here in Las Vegas. And so our enemy, or arch rival, is Nevada. But I think it's an absolute shame to see what's happening to a program that you expect to win 8 games a year and be competitive. They beat Purdue a couple years ago, and it's not a bad program, but it will be for the next couple of years.
Let's move on to the college football playoff, and these are the odds to win. Alabama, and I always like to use this as like the official top 25 college football poll, right? I mean, because that kind of tells what everybody's thinking. No real surprises here as you got Alabama at plus 175, Georgia at 350, Ohio State at plus 350, Clemson at plus 1,200. The USC one kind of surprised me. Is that good value? I guess what I'm asking here, Scott, is there value in this group, or is there value anywhere outside of Alabama or Georgia?
Maybe Clemson at 12-1. Alabama, you're obviously going to always have to pay a premium when you're talking Alabama football. It's just like Duke basketball in their heyday. You got to pay a premium, or like the Patriots when they had Brady. Always got to pay a premium. That's what it is with Bama and Georgia now to that extent. Clemson is 12-1 plus 1,200, and I actually make them about 8-1. I think they're a little bit better than they're being given credit for, so I think there is some value there. There's absolutely no value on Alabama or Georgia, even though they could very well win the title, one of those two teams. I think Georgia is going to slip a little bit. By slip a little bit, they might lose 1 more game than they did last year and not get to the finals, to the championship game. That would probably be the team that I think has value. You talked about USC. I think they're a little bit overvalued. It's all this hoopla coming from the coach, Lincoln Riley. Some of the players he's brought on board, no doubt, are superstars. and he brought some transfers, a couple of them key players in from OU. But I'm a little bit less likely to jump on USC out of the gates. I think it's going to take a little time to develop that chemistry. So, yeah, Clemson around 12-1. As far as Iowa, I don't think they have the offense again. Listen, as long as Parker's the defensive coordinator, they're going to be in it every game. There's such a turnaround from one year to the next. If you've got a great turnover margin last year, you're probably going to even things out, come back to the medium a little bit this year. If you have a horrible turnover margin the year before, you're going to come back to the medium a little bit this year. And I don't know that they're going to produce the kind of turnovers that led to wins that they had last year.
Hey, quick reminder, if you want to have a question for Dr. Rob, if you have a question for Scott Spreitzer, you can also give us a call at 402-543-5556. This is a new little feature we have this year. So as the season goes along, just start remembering this phone number, and you'll be able to do that. Also, if you're watching on social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, you can leave your comments, and we can show some of those social media comments too if you have a question for Dr. Rob or Scott Spreitzer. So here's our first game of the night, Scott. This is Nevada at New Mexico State. You've got the Wolfpack, I see, at -9. The money line, New Mexico State at +265. Nevada at -340, and the over-under at 50.5.
All right, listen, I'm going to tell you guys something that you're going to never hear me say other than in week 0 and week 1. Nevada was as much as a 17.5-point favorite in May at a couple of books.
Wow.
They're now 9. You're never going to hear me again this year say that I'm going to be going against a team and lose 8.5 points of value, which is basically what we're talking about here. The bookmakers rarely, very rarely put up a bad number. They hung a bad number. Sharp money hit the crap out of this. We jumped on. I didn't get it until it was 14. It was like 17, like I mentioned. I got it at 14. It's 9. I still think it's a play on New Mexico State. I think this is a field goal game by the time it's said and done. I just told you, almost 4 dozen players are off the roster from last year for Reno. Do you think in week 1 this team's really going to be ready to go and have to win by 2 touchdowns on the road? New Mexico State's no great shakes, but they've got Jerry Kill now as a head coach. And the moves and the transfers and the pickups they made on defense, it's not a bad defense you're going to see out of New Mexico State. So I still like New Mexico State, even though that number's moved 8.5 points. And I promise you, unless half the team's not playing down the road, I'll never say that again the rest of this season.
Did I lose you, Rob? Was there an earthquake over there?
I'm back.
I thought I put up a sleep.
I'm back.
Hey, I think Rob's had too many beers tonight. I think that's exactly what's happened.
I just had the one. It's just a little camera adjustment.
Is that your dog right there, by the way?
It is. Can you see her?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, coming into play.
Come here. There we go.
Is that the new? He's got a couple Great Danes. He's a glutton for punishment. Rob likes those big dogs. And is that the new one, or is that the old one?
This is the new one. So this is Percy. So
all right, Percy.
He's a five-year-old rescue dog. He's actually just an absolute sweetheart. Yep. And he's knocking over my camera again. So, but
fired that camera guy.
So the game I'm intrigued about is this one. I really am. I'm intrigued. Craig Bohl, former Nebraska defensive coordinator. He had a lot of success at North Dakota State. He's had some success at Wyoming. I'm intrigued by this game as the Cowboys open up at Illinois. You have Illinois an 11-point favorite. The money line has Wyoming at +330, Illinois at -440, over under at 44. Scott.
Yeah, this one's moved a little bit too. You could have got Illinois if you like them at 8.5. Not too long ago, and 10 just a couple of days ago. Now they're up to 11, so they've crossed that one of the key numbers at 10. I'm going to tell you something real quick that I should have said at the start of all this. Week 0, week 1, exercise discipline. Always exercise discipline in sports betting. Week 0 and week 1 more than any other time. College football has a week 0, NFL week 1, week 2. Exercise, caution, discipline. You ain't got to play every single game that's on TV. And I'll tell you, there's an old saying that I should have said earlier from a mentor of mine who's 82 years old now. And I've known him since I was in my late 20s. And he's been doing nothing but betting for a living for over 40 years. And he's a very well-educated guy, former attorney, the whole thing. And excuse the grammar, but this is how he would say it. It's the first damn game of the season, and nobody knows nothing about nothing. And so
a lot of double negatives in there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how he would say it. And it's the God honest truth when it comes to sports betting week 0, week 1. Having said that, Illinois, I think, is the right side here. I like Craig Bolt, too, by the way. He's an excellent coach. But they've lost a lot from last year. The roster was decimated with transfers, leaving Laramie this past offseason. Offensive line is down. They lost their best running back. The defense looks to be soft against the run. When you talk about the ones that are coming back, they're just not a great defensive team against ground games. And do you really want to say that when you're going to face a Brett Bielema coach team that you're soft against the run? Bielema brought in an assistant who's going to try to jack up the plays a little bit. In other words, they want to get plays off on offense much quicker than they have in the past. They're no great shakes. They're not bad. I think they end up winning this game by about 17 points, but it has more to do with the style of play and the fact that Wyoming's probably not going to be able to slow the run.
All right, so now the game everybody's getting ready for. Nebraska is in Dublin, getting ready to play Northwestern. They had a practice today, and, of course, everybody's going to be focused on the offense. And the offense is the key here, right? Adrian Martinez is gone. Casey Thompson's going to be the starter. And here is Mark Whipple, the offensive coordinator of the Nebraska Cornhuskers, after practice today, talking about the Nebraska offense.
Well, just, as I've said enough times, that taking care of the football and being a leader, but the leadership comes from your play and not from your mouth. So it's more like, hey, there's going to be a bump in the road. There's going to be something happens. It always does in the first game. We as coaches, you like to have everything in plan and in play, but very rarely does it happen in the first game. So I've been on both ends of it. So, get out of the first quarter without giving the game away, really, and then settle in. And it's kind of the way we've been in our scrimmages throughout the spring and fall. So I certainly would like to change it. We'd like to start with a touchdown on the first drive, but so we'll see how that plays out. So, and I went over some of the third down stuff today and a little bit of red zone with them, and I'll have more of that with them Thursday and Friday on exactly what we're going to do in those situations.
So here's a look at the game right now. Northwestern and Nebraska. It is a home game for Northwestern. Nebraska 13-point favorite. The money line, Nebraska minus 555. I wouldn't touch that. Just there's no value there. Northwestern plus 400. The over/under at 49.5. Rob, I'm going to start with you. Just because I want to know what you thought about what Mark Whipple had to say right there about the offense and getting off to a fast start, and that leadership really comes down to the way you play, not necessarily what you can say in a huddle.
It's, I'm kind of going back to what Scott said. It's the first damn game. And you really don't know what you're going to see here. But I do think if they can come out, get a score, even if they don't score, if they can put a pretty good drive together, I think they're going to be fine. I think the problem comes in if they come out. You saw what they did last year, first game of the season, opening drive, couple of penalties, and things kind of went downhill from there. Those are the kind of things that are going to kill this team. And if they kind of slip back into those mistakes that you saw last year, you don't have a good first drive. I think it really haunts them in this game.
Scott, what do you think of what the offensive coordinator had to say?
I like everything he says. I like what he did with Pickett. I don't know if he got too much credit for that or not. I think he got the right amount of credit in what he did with that Pitt offense, which was, nothing special over the last decade. And all of a sudden they're good. And by the way, guys, I'm over here looking at my phone, turning on my air conditioning because it went off. And it's about 110 degrees in Las Vegas and starting to sweat. I don't want anybody to think it's because I'm nervous about being on two studs. But anyway, no, I'm just going to say, I like what Rob said too. However, Rob, I was going to ask you, if this was Adrian Martinez, not trying to knock the kid around, but we know what he went through, we know what happened, we know the mistakes that he made were always, it seemed like, in key spots in the football games. If this was Adrian Martinez and they go 3-and-out, or maybe they get one first down and have to punt, doesn't that seem like that would weigh on the team? Like, here we go again, more than if Casey Thompson goes 3-and-out. It's like, he's fresh to all this stuff. He didn't have to go through all the garbage last year and the mistakes and shooting themselves in the foot. So that would be my question first off wouldn't they be better prepared to rebound from a 3-and-out than they went under Adrian Martinez?
I would like to think so, but on the flip side, I think if you look at Thompson, I'm not sure he's that much of a different animal than what Martinez was. I think you saw a little bit better differential when you look at the touchdowns versus interceptions, but you got a guy who still threw he averaged about an interception a game or just under an interception a game. He was kind of consistently mistake prone a little bit last year as well, too, similar to Martinez. If you have him coming in and you see those same kind of mistakes Martinez had, you're kind of back in the same boat again. And that's something that really worries me about Thompson, is that we haven't seen a much different product with him than what we saw with Martinez last year. If you at least go back and look at what he did at Texas,
Sure.
At the same time too, he was supposedly playing with his thumb injury for a good chunk of the season last year. He says that's healed up. The coaches say that's healed up. The team medical staff says that's healed up. If he's truly healthy, maybe that's the difference maker here. In terms of the overall product that we've seen on the field with Martinez the last 4 years versus Thompson last year, I don't know if we're getting something that's really that much different. And so if you do see those issues that pop up that we saw last year on an early drive, opening drive, and they get stopped, I do think it sends Nebraska back into that self-doubt spiral.
Yeah,
so
I worry about that. Go ahead.
So what do you think here, Scott?
Well, I by the way, in a lot of joints now, not all of them, but I would say at least half the joints, it's 13.5, up to 13.5. So the first thing I'd say is if folks are looking to back Northwestern, it might not go up to 14, but I think in a couple of shops it will. And if you have plenty of access, you might get a 14 and be able to jump on that with Northwestern. There's really no reason to wait if you like Nebraska. There is a little bit of reason to wait if you like Northwestern. And for me, I do believe that Nebraska is going to win. I think it's going to be like a 34-17 type of affair. Kind of falls in line with that total, which is sitting around 49.5. I think you might be able to play Nebraska over 30.5 as far as the team total is concerned. And guys, if you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear it. I thought last year you had all those mistakes being made by the Huskers, start to finish, obviously, in that season. They finally stopped shooting themselves in the foot. I guess it was pure luck because the very next week they're forgetting how to, the punter's punting to the wrong side of the field and they lose a game to Michigan State. I think that was the next week. But anyway, they finally they didn't make dumb, low IQ football mistakes against Northwestern, and we got to see the talent advantage, the individual talent advantage across the board that Nebraska had over Northwestern. And when I look at their schedule, Nebraska was ranked 6th in the country in transfer recruits. And they were ranked number 6. Fumble.
Sorry, camera went down again.
They were like 20th overall recruiting, but they were 6th in transfer recruiting. There's a big difference when it comes to individual talent advantage on this team if they can get it together, have good chemistry, go out and make the right plays. And we saw it against Northwestern last year. Maybe 56-7 was a snowball issue on the field. But if they play up to their ability, the only teams that I see on their schedule that have better talent than Nebraska, Oklahoma and Michigan. That's it. That's it if you look across the board. They just got to play up to that talent. But I think they scored 34.
Yeah, but Scott, I think they've had that talent differential over a lot of teams over the last few years, and you still see these losses. The other thing with that Northwestern game last year, and I guess I'm curious your thoughts on how big a difference this made in last year's game. You had a new offensive coordinator, you had a new defensive coordinator at Northwestern. How does that play in this year that those guys now got a year under their belt? You would think there'd be a little bit more of a gelling of both the offense and defense for the Wildcats.
No, it's all great points, and they will be better on defense. And, you look like Pat Fitzgerald, for instance. Listen, I'm just going to say it like I believe it. I think Pat Fitzgerald is a better head coach than Scott Frost. He makes better in-game adjustments than Frost does. And we'll see if the hires at Nebraska in the offseason make up for some of that difference in talent as a coach. As far as Northwestern is concerned, listen, Fitzgerald he does a great job of rebounding from an off season in Evanston. And so that's something to be concerned about too. There are so many concerns with the Huskers. I think they get the cover here, guys. And as Travis knows, I'm not a homer. I'll go against him when I think I should go against him. And that's been quite a bit over the last several years, probably going back to the last year that Bo Pelini was there. I'll fire away against him. Listen, Rob, when you were at Nebraska, man, and you had Osborne, and you had that coaching staff that was around forever, and you guys had that talent, there was always one game before the season where I said, this might be the game they slip up. I can't wait to see the point spread. Not necessarily lose the game, but darn it, you guys were laying 28 points every game. I thought this one they win by 20. Those were the good days when it came to betting on them against basketball. Now you got to worry if they can beat, Sacramento State sometimes the way they play. But I do think they win. I think they win by about 17. But I think we're going to know early. And here's my best kind of scenario if you're a bettor. In-game betting. You're going to know by the end of the first quarter whether Nebraska's mindset and attitude has gotten over the hump from last year. And as you mentioned, Rob, if they come out and go 3-and-out or maybe get a first down after punt, something stupid happens, they're down 7-0. If they go into a shell, all of a sudden you got some in-game betting possibilities that can make you a few bucks this particular week, and you start betting on Northwestern. If you see Nebraska playing great leadership on the field from the captains, if you see them taking care of business, you've got some potential areas to make money in-game betting. I think this game screams in-game betting, and you just watch and see what's going on. Attitude-wise out of the Huskers that first quarter and a half.
That may be for another show because I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're already 6 minutes over, but that's okay. Because I think we do need to talk about in-game betting because, on the brand new Betfred Sports app, you can just sit there and bet all the way through the game, whether that, the first quarter spread, the first quarter, there's so many just different bets, and that really makes gambling a lot of fun and very interesting. So that we'll be talking about in-game betting as we go along through the season. We got a lot of stuff planned. Again, going behind the point spread every single Wednesday at 8:00. So make sure to make plans for it. Coming up starting next week, Dr. Rob and I are bringing back Doc's Diagnosis. Are you ready for this, Rob? We've got a telestrator for you. We've got everything for you to just shine and show your knowledge of X's and O's.
I can't wait. This is going to be so much fun.
So this is brought to you by Centris Federal Credit Union. It's great to have them on board. And the Doc's Diagnosis, you can find it on YouTube and Facebook. Next week, we'll do probably 3 plays that we start with and then start doing that all season long. Of course, you can get a free bet with Betfred Sports. Download the Betfred Sports app on the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. Create a brand new account and use the promo code DocTalk. $20 for the free bet if you're in Arizona, Colorado, or Iowa. Of course, this show has been for entertainment purposes only. If you do have a gambling problem, make sure to call 1-800-BETS-OFF. We do want to thank Scott Spreitzer for joining us. He's going to be here each and every week. And again, it's a commitment. Scott, I can't thank you enough. And I mentioned Betfred's not paying you. You're doing this out of the kindness of your heart and a friendship. And I really, really do appreciate you giving your time because I know your time is valuable as you've been doing shows all day long.
Well, it's funny how this started. I'll say real quickly, because I was talking to you. You were mentioning something about the show a couple months ago. And I was like, yeah, I heard it. And you're like, you listen? I'm like, hell yeah. But I got a chance to listen to the show. You guys are great. This is a blast. I can't wait to do, shows with you this football season with the two of you. And I do listen to the show. So, I'm looking forward to this. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. You see that picture above me, which is in my office upstairs that kind of looks down in my living room? That's Johnny Rogers' punt return against OU. Not that I'm a Husker fan or anything, Rob. But anyway, it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
There it is. We zoomed in like the best we could. Now we do want to say if you want to follow Scott, make sure to go to docsports.com. Do you write there every single day, Scott?
I'm at Doc Sports every single day of the week, 7 days a week, and especially football, no time off until I would say about April 3rd or 4th after the college basketball game. So I'm looking forward to it.
And Scott at Scott Wins on Twitter. You can follow Doc Talk Sports. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All you have to do is subscribe right now or search Doc Talk Sports on YouTube. We don't have the custom channel yet because it hasn't been live for 30 days. Google's weird rules. We got to be live for like 30 days before we're going to have a custom domain. Like the Doc Talk Sports Facebook page. And you can also follow Dr. Rob on Twitter at Doc Talk Sports or follow me on Twitter at Travis Creates. Well, guys, I hope you guys had fun. It was a good first show, I think. I'm going to pat ourselves on the back for a good first show. We only went 9 minutes long.
For us, that's actually pretty damn good.
Well, Scott, last night we had a live podcast that went an hour and 54 minutes.
Well, Rob was kind with his time. He let me go on and on and on and shoot my mouth off, and he just sat there and took it easy.
Hey,
I appreciate it.
Hey, I know who the experts are.
You're the expert.
You know what? You let the talent play.
Oh, okay.
So tell a friend, make sure to let everybody know that we go behind the point spread every single Wednesday at 8 o'clock for Scott Spreitzer, for Dr. Rob Zadiska. I'm Travis Justice. We will talk to you next week on Behind this Point Spread, brought to you by Doc Talk Sports and Betfred Sports.